Why, hello.
Hey there. So, itadakimasu. I don't remember what it means.
I don't know any Japanese. And I don't know what anything means in Japanese. But I do know that my sister says it when we're about to eat. When we go out on sister breakfasts.
Mm.
So I think it has to do with eating.
I think so. It almost sounds like it's been anglicized, though, because it sounds like eat. Like eat adakimasu. Like
Itadakimasu.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I don't remember anymore. I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
Yeah. All I can remember is the, what is it? Gachi so samadeshimasu. It was a feast.
I know also doe tashimashite, which I don't know what that means either, but it relates to don't touch my mustache. It's like the anglicization that people tell you to do. I think that my name means is kitsu. Is that, or is it kitsa?
I don't remember.
Because you don't end any of the sounds do not end with a ta. So there's always a
it'd be su.
Su.
Yeah.
Kitsu.
Kitsu. I think it'd be kitsu.
Kitsu.
Not kitsu. It's kitsu.
Kitsu.
I think that's right. Kid. I think that's right.
Yeah, you took Japanese in college while you and I were dating. How many years did you go?
I did 3 semesters, technically. I did 1 semester at SEMO, and then I did 2 semesters at LSU, at least. All of second year architecture, I was taking it. And then that completed my requirements for language, and our teacher was strict.
Yeah.
So I was not ready to do any more than that. With my demands of work and school, it was too much.
Yeah, I remember it being rather intense, as you described it.
Yeah.
I took foreign language that was more in like the Western world, so it was like a little bit more relatable. Just French.
Yeah.
Je parle un peu de français.
Uh-huh.
I do remember we had a class, and it was kind of a silly class in architecture. I cannot remember what it was that we were supposed to learn. I just remember there was something that we had to recite every day, and then I can't remember anything else.
Yeah,
I can't even remember what we had to recite, but there was a sign-in. And do you remember?
Yeah, I got a D in that class because the sign-in apparently counted for like 45% of your grade, which is ridiculous. And I used it as a means to silently resist the stupidity of why do we have to repeat the same thing every single class, and why is there a sign-in? So I would write my name in English, or in Romanji, katakana. That's how I would write my name, which is like the Americanized or English words that are within the Japanese language. They don't get the same kind of characters as a native word. And I would write my name all the way out in katakana. And at the end of the year, the teacher, which I respect the man, but I don't respect this class. I hated this class. He said at the end of the year, everybody did a great job getting their credit except for the person who wrote your name in Chinese. Whoever that is, you know who you are. You lost all credit. Which was kind of, we were both giving each other the middle finger at that point. But
you did a power play in a situation that you have no power, and you accepted the natural consequences of that, which was to get a bad grade.
Yeah, I got a D in the class.
He ought to have reached out to you prior to the end.
He should have. As a good teacher, he should have done that.
And said, hey, by the way, like, you need to actually sign your name in a legible format. I do not
just
speak
ask
this.
Why? Like, why aren't you paying attention to my class? To which I could have talked to him about. But I refused to learn, to memorize the saying that he kept doing, because in my mind, I couldn't do it. It was like, I don't know, I just resisted. I did not agree with what he was trying to teach us. Only thing I learned in that class is Snickers and Almond Joy. That's it. That a building, a Snickers being that you don't know what's on the inside, and an Almond Joy, you know that there's an almond on the inside because you can see it, related to the form of a building, that you know what's inside the building or not. That's the only thing I learned from that class.
That's more than I remember,
Yeah.
but I'm not the one in this relationship that can remember
Right.
well.
Well, it was something to do with form and space and Morpheus fighting Mr. Anderson and residual space versus active space or something like that. He was trying to be hip and cool. Didn't work.
We were the strange class, like the cohort.
Bless you.
Excuse me. I feel like we were the experimental cohort in architecture.
Yeah, we were.
In that they kept bringing in weird, like, new ideas to teach every year of, we were first years and there was a strange, visiting professor who had kind of crazy ideas that he was trying to impart on freshmen whose minds were still in the matrix.
Yes. And of which that professor, also another colleague in my office, was taught by him at his school in Texas. And we both can recount that nobody understood what he was teaching and why he was teaching it. And all the other professors just shook their head saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
like the first year, and I know it just felt year after year like they tried to do new things with our cohort, and
Yeah.
it just was a major fail because of that first year in particular.
Yeah. We felt let down, I think, as a cohort, because even in our 5th year, we finally got to the cool professor. We were all so excited because all the other classes that had him had built a house or had done some kind of actual practical use of what we were designing into a physical reality. And he comes in and he's like, "Yeah, so I'm supposed to be on sabbatical, but they didn't have anybody to teach you, so here I am. What do you guys want to do?" And at that point I signed out, went to work, and I phoned it in for the rest of that class.
Yeah.
Because there was no point in me being there. He didn't want to teach me, so
Yikes.
whatevs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were kind of that class that, but the class in front of us, they were the perfect children. We definitely had that like middle child syndrome, the class before us. Oh, look at them, they have so many that have stayed in
So talented.
and haven't, been, they hadn't dropped out, whatever you want to call it. Basically the hazing that they did in our architecture program, they hadn't dropped out. And but the ones in front of you, they're so good. And we're like, but we're winning competitions and they're not. We're writing better papers than they are, and they're not. It was just like this competition that was there. And so it was just kind of by the end, we're like, can we just get out of here so we can do architecture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a number of the kids in your class are doing really successfully
Yes.
in practice,
Yes.
all over the country and world.
Yes.
You guys have really succeeded against
I
all
think so.
odds.
Yeah.
The entire program was a major hazing toward your professionalism, and you all persevered and you made it through.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy because you think about the ones who, by the teachers' perspectives, were going to be, they're going to be the great designers. They're going to be the good ones. Actually, no. It was all the ones that of us that were resistant to the teachings. They're the ones that are the principals and vice presidents and really succeeded in their careers, or the great designers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the ones that listen to,
Drink the Kool-Aid.
at least listen to the Nietzschean nihilistic ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was fun.
It was.
Good walk down memory lane. Well, I'm Dale.
I'm Kit.
Welcome to Catholic Hitch. We are a Catholic family seeking heaven and hoping to pick up others along the way.
Small talk. Hey, what's it gonna be?
We'll do Diablo.
All right. Well,
Diablo.
we're gonna keep it short.
We'll keep it short. Well, we should, because we've just started playing the game. So, I ruined my Christmas present. Let's just rip that Band-Aid off. So Black Friday rolls around, and we're gonna go downstairs and play a video game. And I'm just curious, is Diablo 4 on sale? And it was like $30 off or something like that. And so I'm looking at it, and then I get squirreled into all of these reviews that are giving it 1 star. And I'm like, what's going on? This was supposed to be like the poster child for the Blizzard Entertainment and the Diablo series.
So I come downstairs where our TV is, and I come into the middle of you talking about how they probably ruined Diablo 4 and it's just going to be worthless. And I'm like, okay, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you keep going on, and I'm like, all right, so you realize it's on this list that you provide to me of gift ideas. It's at the top of the list, in fact. Do you want to revise your gift list? And then from there, the way it had worked was we've had the kids play Diablo 3 with you.
Mm-hmm.
You and me, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a family event where you all go and kill
Demons
demons together.
Yes.
It's a little bit gory, but we're a big family with kind of older kids, and our younger kids are desensitized. And so the kids were pooling their money to buy you Diablo 4.
Yes.
Or they did pool their money
They
to
pulled
buy
their money.
you
So
Diablo
you
4.
brought the disc down. Was that Friday?
Yeah.
Right. So I load the disc in, get it all set up. And
Yeah, so by the time like you ruined Christmas, I'm like, it's just waiting up there. You have a long weekend. Do you want to just start playing now and just know it's Christmas?
It's totally fine.
Your stocking's going to be light.
That's totally fine. Because I've had fun playing with you and Christina and Terrence. Although they changed it, you used to be able to play 4-player on Diablo 3. Now you can only play 2 players at the same time because apparently it was too crazy bananas.
Well, and with the changes where they made it so that you can keep playing, like the other person can keep proceeding in the game while the other does inventory.
Yes.
Like that would be impossible if you had 4.
Correct.
Right?
Which you couldn't do in the other one. If one person wanted to check their inventory, the whole game pauses and you have to wait on them. So then gameplay slows down significantly. So it's an improvement, and it's actually going back to Diablo 2 and how they had set things up in Diablo 2 when it was a single player game. They just made it 2 players now. So it was good. It was a good move. But I guess overall it's been a good game. They did a patch. They undid what they had done, but what it helped me to do is to say, no, we're going to do a non-seasonal game instead of a seasonal game.
Why don't you describe what you were angsty about with the 1-star reviews
so
and why you were saying that it was going to be garbage because you didn't really contextualize
So
that.
when the game came out, it was great. Everybody was loving it. And there's a seasonal playthrough that you can do where basically you can join in different themes, and massive online games have been doing this for a couple of years now where they'll change up the theme of the season. So for 4 or 6 months, you're playing through and there's a theme throughout. So like this season is the season of blood, which, it's like Halloween and vampire themed. So you can get, you're going to go and fight vampires, or you're going to get attributes that are going to allow you to use things that are ghoulish and things like this, which is fine. But when they did that, what they did is those people who had been playing through before, that have found super cool and awesome weapons and things like this, they halved the abilities of those things and then said, oh, well, but if you want super cool weapons, why don't you just go on the store? You can buy a weapon for $29.95. And of course, everybody said, what are you doing? I paid over $100 for this game, and now you're telling me that I need to pay more money just so that I can actually get through the game? No. And this isn't the first time that games have done this, but it has come up a few times. And every time they do this, the players of the game basically just revolt until the game developer has to go, oh, mea culpa, sorry, didn't mean to do that, I'll fix it. And so they came out with, in season 1, they ruined it. Season 2, they fixed most of it. Probably by season 3, they'll have patched even more and made it better to where it should be. But this seems to just be an ongoing trend of developers in the programming industry that are trying to see how much they can sneak into the gaming world and say, hey, won't you pay to play this game after you've already bought the game? It's just a continual thing that they keep doing to try in order to make it to where they can make more money. And I understand, like, it takes a lot of a lot of labor in order to make these games. Like, back in the day, you make an Atari game, it took 6 months, a year at most. Most games today, and especially Blizzard games, Diablo games typically take about a decade to make because they plan it out and they craft it really well. But Blizzard was bought by Activision. And Activision has done some good stuff. I mean, they did Mortal Kombat, which is a huge success, but they make fighting games, which you can churn. You can just build them and go and make multiple versions of them and sell. It's something they've done forever. Blizzard never did that before, and now here it comes that they're like, oh, hey, why don't you come to the store and buy stuff? Which this game never had a store before. And they got huge kickback when they did it on the mobile platform. There was somebody out there that went and bought like everything you could possibly buy on the mobile platform and then went through the game, and it still was almost impossible to beat. It's like, okay, so you did this game with the intent of trying to make extra money. You try to make a cash cow, which is, in gaming terms, unethical, immoral. That's not what you do. So, it was interesting. The thing that, before I got on that rant, we were going to talk about was, as we've been playing this game and seeing the theme that's going through, comparatively to Diablo 3, the storyline is very much good versus evil. You are the good, and you must face and fight the evil. In this game, it's more like, you're good, maybe, possibly, and the world sucks, and so everybody's turning to evil, but that might not be bad. We don't know yet. And the characters are a little bit androgynous. It's a little hard to know. Like, it's really hard to know if you're a man or a woman in this game.
I mean,
if they've leaned into that.
Yeah, you picked a
wizard.
Sorcerer.
Yeah, whatever. Same difference.
A male sorcerer. And then the initial armor that you get, which is, of course, leveled, so you can only have a certain level.
Yes.
It's not very, much armor. But all of the styling on the armor is super... it takes away
crossed area. Looked like I was supposed to have boobs.
Yeah, it takes away the
I had a
masculine physique, and kind of the converse with mine. I was a necromancer woman, who necromancer body types are gonna be more skeletal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very was just lacking some of the feminine distinctive elements, and they were both in very similar type of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it just is interesting.
Yes.
How that's coming through.
Oh, yes.
I mean, actually, the fact that we saw there was still a binary gender, that's maybe resistance right there in this day and age.
I don't think it was resistance by the developers. They just knew that if they went ahead and said there were no genders, they would get so much pushback from the gaming community. Like, why are you bringing your politics into my game? This is a world where everybody is fighting for survival because angels and demons, two other realms, are fighting against one another, and the world of Sanctuary is stuck in the middle. And humans have the attributes of both angels and demons, and they have to make choices. And so this realm so far is making the choices of the demons instead of the angels. And so there should be this dichotomy. It's very clear between it, but they're blurring everything.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this whole game plays out. Yeah. Because the image of Lilith is the main baddie. She's the main heavy. And she does look grotesque the way that they stylized her. She has gigantic horns.
Right.
She has almost like a carapace, artistically... overlaying skin. She has things that are kind of set inside of her skin that look like they're infected at the area where they're set into. Yes. And she's wearing, armory type of stuff. But they give her beautiful eyes.
She's very effeminate.
Beautiful. Her face is gorgeous.
Yes.
And then the vocal artist that they used has a
very,
wonderful,
very charismatic voice.
Exceptionally charismatic. So she says some things, she calls to essentially a congregation of people and says that sin is their birthright and let them be beautiful in sin. And the way that she says it is like very maternal. And that in itself is like horrific.
Oh, it's very horrific.
To witness. And so it will be interesting if they do play around with the dichotomy of good and evil and go the way of Voldemort, where there is no good and evil, only power.
Yes, we
Because I think that it could go that way.
And if you're thinking right now in your brains, wait, you're playing this with your children, just know that we are skipping all of the scenes that have this in them, because it is not for their small minds to be thinking about this and trying to make judgment on it. We're just fighting through the main playthrough of them fighting the demons and
which is
things.
fun to do. I mean, I'm sorry, it's fun to do as a family.
Yeah, it is.
And you are fighting evil.
You are.
Like, literally. And then there are humans that are being sucked in, swept away into evil and some bad things, and you wind up fighting them and usually they turn into like something demonic. Something bad and grotesque changes their humanity into something else a lot of times. So,
but there are many parts through the world where there are those that are with the light that are trying to fight against evil, and you are helping them throughout the storyline. Like the main storyline, you're still the protagonist fighting for the light, because those few that are still of the good they know that if Lilith has her way, it will be the end of all things. So it's still there, but it's just morally relative.
Yeah, and the way that they're
setting
up you as the protagonist is in a gray area. The narration that is happening is leaving a back door open for you as the protagonist to end up actually being on Lilith's side. That is... I mean, I've seen the prologue 3 times now.
Yeah, it's very
I've played through. It's very open-ended. I've like kind of picked up on that, I think, in my second round, and I'm like, oh, like really? This could go either way, which is an interesting tension to play with, as long as they land on like us being on the side of good.
Mm-hmm.
But if we end up in this morally relativistic quagmire where Lilith is the hero of the story, like that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, you're trying to beat our children through the game, and I don't think you'll have a problem with that.
No, I'll play before they do, so I'm prepared. And so far, we haven't done the main storyline.
Yeah, just side quests.
Just the side quests, so that I can prepare. If there are things that we need to talk about, we're going to talk about ahead of time. Because it should be that it's not bad for them to be exposed to this, as long as they understand that the genre is horror, and that they're going to play with things that we, in understanding of God, understand an absolute reality, not a relative reality, and that they're going to play with that and push that. And so we have to have conversations about it, deeper conversations, which are good.
Like where you can't do something evil in the name of good.
Yes.
Like there is no... the intention matters, but so does the action.
Absolutely.
Like everything needs to be good. I know what we want to talk about.
That's our big talk. That's our big talk.
Right.
Okay. So we'll go to that big talk.
All right, we just had a total we're going to deviate.
I'll call that a God moment.
It was a God moment. So what did we watch last night?
We watched the David Suchet Agatha Christie of Hercule Poirot, The Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
I got there. It took me a minute.
You did. And we had watched the Kenneth Branagh one.
Yeah.
Branagh.
I think
I don't know. Sorry, Kenneth.
Yes. Brilliant actor.
Yes, he's fantastic. I don't care for him as Poirot, personally.
No, it's a different Poirot.
It's a different Poirot.
We're used to the, it's not BBC, it's Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah.
Right?
David Suchet.
Yeah, so this is like
superb.
The magnum opus of PBS.
Yeah.
These would be the ones if you had to ask me. What was it? Downton Abbey. I think a lot of people would consider that the best work, but I don't think so. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not as good as these.
It's newer, so
it's
I think
newer.
That,
the
that's
film
where
is better, but
I think it had a larger audience because it launched in the time of streaming versus Poirot launched prior to streaming, so it was a more limited audience.
All the way into the 90s, right?
So, and that's Poirot with David Suchet. So we watched The Murder on the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh. several weeks ago as a family, and you and I know the story. And if you don't know the story of Murder on the Orient Express, stop listening, because we're going to spoil this thing as we discuss it.
Go watch one of them.
It's amazing. It's a classic plot. I think a lot of people are familiar with it. It's got a major twist. So goodbye if you don't want to be spoiled.
Yep, we'll catch you next week. For those of you who are in the know.
Yeah. So we watched the redo, the recent redo, and I didn't particularly care for some of the portrayal, and so we said we're going to watch the David Suchet version of this story, and then we're going to talk about it.
Yes, because I think it's elegant. It's
There
probably
are
the best way to say it. It's very elegantly done.
Yes, there are like themes that are, pervasive through the film.
Yes.
Versus, I'm not sure what the theme was on the Kenneth Branagh one. It wasn't as pervasive or as obvious.
It had a little bit of the actors movie feel to it. You know, there are so many big names.
Yeah, lots of heavies.
That, you know, you're there because you know them and you're watching them. And, I mean, Johnny Depp did a good job.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer, she did a
really
good job. I mean, they're brilliant actors.
But together,
but
it was less than the sums of the parts.
Yeah, so the basic premise is that Hercule Poirot is on either vacation or a holiday, or he's on a case.
He's being called
and he's
home
being called
expeditiously.
Back. Yes.
He had just wrapped up a case with a kind of gnarly ending to it.
Yes.
Where there was like a sourness to the resolution.
Yes.
And I think that happens in both movies.
In both movies, this happens where essentially the captain of the security or the police had actually done the murders, and he was trying to pin it on others, and it's happening in the Middle East. So there's this sense of an old world law system, like Hammurabi, or like a Jewish law. Like it's not a Christian world view that is happening here
in the justice system.
In the justice. So both of these, they're fighting against this. They solve the case, but then they're called back and they have to leave immediately. So Hercule is trying to find out how he's going to do this. In both instances, they meet Monsieur Bouc, who does different roles in both in a way, but both are the kind of marketer or manager of the Orient Express. And so they get him on the Orient Express and find him a space, even though there were no spaces available. But one person doesn't show up. So luckily they're able to put him into that spot, and he's able to get on. And so it takes 3 days to travel on the Orient Express from where he was, wherever in off the Black Sea, to London. And so through...
It wasn't London, it was a different destination.
Oh, was it? Was it Europe?
Yes, but
right,
that's not really important.
It's not important. So basically, there's a duration of time.
You don't get
right?
there.
Right, you don't get there, but there's a duration of time. And during that time, you meet all of the people on the train, or at least this one car of the train, which is odd when you think about it, because there's typically more people on the train, and they all have to eat in the dining room, unless
they were
back
in
the day.
First class.
Oh.
Yeah, so second class, it was a different accommodation.
They have their own. Yeah, so that makes more sense. Mm-hmm. Considering my only experience.
And they were
as
locked
Amtrak.
between the cars because, again, like, you don't just let that riffraff from second class and third class, like, have free reign within your first class accommodations. So that was important to the plot, because it meant it was a limiting factor.
It was.
It meant that if a murder were to take place, the only one to perpetrate the crime had to have been in the car.
Yes. Yeah. So there is a man that is on the car who's of questionable nobility. He makes advances at one of the women, and he just seems to be an all-around jerk. He tries to persuade Hercule Poirot to watch his back, because he knows he has enemies, and all of this, he's used to getting what he wants. And so I think in the new version, they put it to where he was basically a swindler of fake antiques, and the Masterpiece Theater version of this, he ends up turning into, he's just like a bad guy, and he's a businessman, he's a rich businessman, he's an American, and all these things. And so the basic plot from there is he gets murdered. You don't know who did it. Hercule is trying to figure this out. Everybody seems to be lying to him throughout the entire thing. And kind of the end resultant is that you find out that actually everybody except for Monsieur Bouc was in on it. And it comes back to a family that had tragically lost their daughter to a man who turned out to be Cassetti, who was the businessman, who was under a different alias. And everyone on the train had a connection to the family who had tragically lost their daughter because Cassetti murdered the daughter and ransomed her.
Yeah, he murdered her and ransomed her, was not, of course, returned to her family because of them realizing that she had been killed. The mother, who was pregnant, went into premature labor, and she and her child both died.
Yes.
And then the husband committed suicide. So what he did, his crime resulted in 4 people's deaths.
Yes.
One death was, a 5-year-old was murdered by him within an hour of being kidnapped. Was terrified.
Yes.
In that situation, and he was caught, but the trial was essentially rigged by the mafia, so he walked free.
Scot-free.
So he has been able to be at large. Everyone has known that he did it, but he never had any consequences within the American justice system. I'm sure there were consequences socially to him, but
yes.
not like the punitive justice that we are promised as an American population.
Yes.
Where you're, tried by a jury and, everything is fair and just.
Yes. So I think, the interesting thing between the two movies is how they go about portraying the justice. So in the Kenneth Branagh movie, Hercule is he's on for the ride, and he's frustrated because he knows everybody's lying to him because he's a brilliant man. And they kind of relay it as but this guy was scum of the earth, and look what he did. And shouldn't we have justice for what he did, because he got away with it, and he shouldn't have got away with it. And Poirot has to make a decision if he's going to turn them into the law or not.
So just in case you haven't watched it in a while, Frank Cassetti, again under a different alias, was murdered. He was stabbed 12 times by someone or someones, and it wound up being the 12 passengers of this train, sans Book, so without Mr. Book. So even the conductor was involved. All 12 of them, whose lives had been basically seriously disturbed or ended by the murders, or the murder and the deaths that Cassetti had brought about, they all stabbed him, each one by one. So he had 12 stab wounds, one for each person.
Yes.
12 people on a jury, which, the jury let them down. The jury system in the United States let them down. So they took justice into their own hands. And, of course, it's Poirot. He's fastidious about the truth and about justice. And in the Poirot version, and I feel like they did it at the
Masterpiece
same
Theater
time.
one.
Yes, the Masterpiece, the Poirot version. The David Suchet
The real one.
version. They began the plot, and I read this book a long time ago. I cannot remember what's in the actual book by Agatha Christie. I should probably read that again. But in the Masterpiece Theater version, they begin the story when he's in Istanbul, and he and another passenger, so Poirot and another passenger on the train, they witness a woman being discovered as an adulteress and watch her being stoned to death.
Yes.
And the female passenger of Poirot is hugely disturbed by this scene, and Poirot's response is, "We're in a different land. This is their justice system. The woman who committed adultery, she understood that this could be a potential consequence of that act. So ergo, we cannot intervene in this justice system. And in a way, when Poirot exposes, and as he gets closer and closer to acknowledging that he knows, everyone, I think, understands that he knows before he acknowledges that he knows. But in their desperation to try to obfuscate the truth, they start becoming almost hysterical while they're in the train car together. And the train car is getting colder and colder and colder as they're stuck in this snowdrift together. And he is eventually presented with acknowledging that he knows that they all murdered this guy. And murder is murder. They took a human life into their own hands outside of the law. That's vigilante justice. And they are trying to say, you know, the justice system was rigged. The justice system let them down. They're 12 people, just like 12 people on a jury in America. And that this was an act of righteousness. And, you know, he is saying it is not. Like, murder is murder. Like, you can't approach things that way. And what's interesting, they get stalled in a snowdrift. And that's the whole reason for them even being in this dilemma. Because if they had not been stalled
the unraveling of a perfect crime.
Yes, it would have been a perfect crime otherwise. Like, they're two primary problems, and where they probably should have abandoned the entire escapade, except for probably the tons of capital that went into this. Poirot was assigned to their car, and they knew who he was when he got seated, and they're like, this is Poirot, and they're giving each other like Google eyes, like across the empty space.
The world
to each
famous
other.
detective just got on our train. How are we going to do this? But they had already had the premeditation, and the malice, and the desire for revenge.
Yeah.
It was absolutely necessary in their minds that they had to do this.
Yeah, this was their moment. This is when they were going to, take vengeance for what had happened to their loved ones. And the main problem with their perfect crime was that the train got stuck in the snow. Because if the train had not gotten stuck in the snow, you would never know if an assassin jumped off, like the train, or got off at one of the towns. Like, there was no... with the train's regular schedule, they would have hit several stops, and there was a possibility that someone could have departed. They were like laying the groundwork for conductors, uniform, someone coming in, perpetrating a conductor to have committed the crime.
Right.
Anyway.
But the main difference between the two is really that in one, you see Cassetti, and he's just kind of this bad guy. And in the other, you see Cassetti, and he's afraid, and he's talking about God. And they both do, I think, that in a little bit of a way. But in the
David Suchet.
The David Suchet one, they bring into light that he was actively praying to God for protection
and forgiveness.
And for forgiveness. Like, you knew that something was going on in his heart.
Yeah.
And that this murder had happened a long time before this was going on. And so in that respect, you see that, okay, there is a conversion that is happening. But you have all of these people who don't know that, and they want their revenge, their vigilante justice. In the other one, you have the same, but you don't see his repentance.
Yeah. So they do this beautiful kind of like a scene between Poirot and Cassetti when Poirot's saying his evening prayers as a Catholic Belgian man, faithful Belgian man. He's saying his nightly prayers, and he's thanking God for basically it really. So anyway, he's saying his prayers, and then it cuts to Cassetti saying his prayers.
Yes.
And what it was portraying was Jesus's parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, that both were coming into the synagogue and praying, and the tax collector, or the Pharisee, is praying like, oh, thank God I'm not like that man. I'm not like all other human sinners. I'm like that tax collector over there. And the tax collector is just down on his knees, like saying, Lord, forgive me. Have mercy on me.
Yes. Even though he doesn't even know how. in this scenario. He doesn't know how, but he is asking for it, which we know that when a heart is turned in that way, God is going to do what God does. He's going to mold the heart in order to do the good.
Yeah.
Even though this horrendous evil has happened, there's always the opportunity for redemption. That's what we believe. Otherwise, we're all hosed, right? I mean, just hands down. So they're playing with that. And there's also a dichotomy that happens between one of the passengers who's a devout Christian woman. And so in the Brownell version of it, she it's just kind of a straw man. It's not very fleshed out. You just think, oh, this is a holy woman. But then they talk about how like she has boxer's hands and just portrays her like there's something else going on. And the David Suchet version, this woman is a woman who is devout to God. She's a missionary, and she has, in her own way, is very in love with God, but she cannot agree with the Catholics because of confession.
Yeah.
Because it seems the way they portray it that possibly Cassetti could have gone to a priest and asked for confession and the sacrament of reconciliation, gotten absolution. But in her own heart, she cannot give him absolution. So therefore, the Catholics are wrong. And then that's what they play with and they point to.
Yeah, she literally said the Catholics have it all wrong because they believe that there's forgiveness for all sins, and there isn't forgiveness for all sins. And then Poirot's like, for instance, sins against children? She's
Yes.
like, yes, those are unforgivable.
Yes.
And then kind of the resolution, once it's known that Poirot knows, and they prevail upon his mercy together. They lay their case. They lay it all bare, and it's Poirot and Book. They're both the only ones who are witness to this like mass confession.
Yes.
Them, saying, we were let down by the justice system. He destroyed all of our lives with what he did. This is only right. We only did what is right. And
Yes.
Poirot, continues to resist that they were right. And it becomes, very clear that he is not going to bend. And they deliberate, a couple of the passengers deliberate murdering Poirot and Book.
Yes.
Saying, what are 2 more murders at this point? We can go free. Which in itself is like a stupid idea, because like if you keep killing, it's not going to uncomplicate the situation.
Well, it was the change between this premeditated cold murder to a moment of passion, like in the fight of passion that they would do it again.
Yeah, and most of the passengers, the ones who had just murdered someone, leap up to defend Book and Poirot.
Yes.
And say, no, we can't do this. And so in the moment when they are at an impasse and they've asked for mercy and Poirot has said no, they are all resigned from then on. So it's a quiet train ride.
Yes.
They know they're going to be turned over to the authorities as soon as it stops, because the authorities are going to be coming the next day. Not stops. The train's been stopped.
The authorities were coming to them while they're being dug out, because the train was basically derailed by this giant bank of snow that was over the tracks. And that happens in both of them. The big difference between them in this moment is really that one scene in the Suchet version happens inside the train car, because it makes absolutely no sense that you would be in the middle of a blizzard and not be stuck in the train car, versus in the other one they say that, well, the people got to the train and had dug it out, and so they had this big scene of understanding and the layout of what actually happened, with tables and chairs in front of a tunnel with all of these people who have sinned and done this horrible thing. And so it's this big hoopla. But in both ways, when they come to the end and Poirot has to make this moral decision of what is he going to do. In the Kenneth Branagh one, we see that he has mercy as he makes this decision, and he leaves, and he kind of talks about or prays to his the one love of his life who he lost. And in the David Suchet one, we see that when he when he leaves after telling the police that the way in which they actually had portrayed this perfect murder to go down, he went with that story because it was believable. And he turns to them, and they see that he has been merciful and that they are free. One, they have a sense of relief, but at the other moment, they have this sense of the weight of what they have just done. Not only have they murdered, but they have lied and they have broken Hercule Poirot. And he turns around from them, and he is literally breaking and almost in tears in that moment, because he had to choose mercy or justice, which were the highest and best goods of all things. And he chose mercy for his faith instead of justice, for the law is the highest good.
Yeah.
Which is so brilliant.
Yeah, and he's clutching a rosary.
Yes, he clutches his rosary as he's walking away crying.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this is like one of the last in this series that you see of the movies. And so we know the character. We have been with this character for almost a decade. And you know that it's breaking him at that moment. And you can't quite get there with the movie, the new one with Kenneth Branagh. He does a brilliant job, but you don't get to that depth. And they didn't set it up that way at all.
Yeah, like it was a different theme,
Yes.
and I almost would, I don't know if I want to rewatch it, but like the theme wasn't as obvious as the one with David Suchet. Clearly from the get-go, they were setting up, prayer and what does God want. That foundation was throughout. And then the dichotomy between mercy and justice was throughout. So it was consistent in the storyline.
Yes.
It was addressed multiple times in dialogue or in situations within the play. So, it was a really nice way to discuss. Because, when we were able to talk to the kids a little bit about, what they saw and just say, was everyone happy when that... when Poirot walked away, they just got away with murder. Did they look happy? And the kids are like, no, they did not look happy. And it's like, yeah, because it was the weight of their sins were hitting them. Mm-hmm. They got away with it. And they did. They broke something that was unbreakable, perceivably. Yeah.
No, I mean, in my opinion, the Suchet version is the better of the versions.
Yeah.
It's not as crisp as the other one as far as, scenery and things like that. But I felt that as a movie, you felt like you were in the train. All of the aches and pains of the passengers in the 1920s inside of a train, you knew what was going on. The new one, it was a set. It was just part of the scene, and it wasn't about where they were and the kind of the historic accuracy of it. It was just the background in order to purvey the acting.
Yeah.
And so, I'm for David Suchet's version. I think it is a better version.
And the other thing, like finally, that David Suchet also sets up is that where the murder takes place is in like the backwaters of Europe, where it's like cowboy land, and there isn't like a good justice system. And so Book explains like, hey, whatever we say, like they're just gonna pull out the ropes and lynch someone, and we could just let all of this is a harsh place and it's not really a just place.
He is for forgiving them, letting them go, like which is the worst evil here, what Cassetti did or what they did. And so it's not that he is right, it's just that he points to that maybe the law isn't the greatest good here. And I think I can't remember if he does that in both. We'd have to go back and watch it. But it was very interesting because they're talking about not Yugoslavia, but an area that would have definitely been part of the communist regime or the Socialist Party of the time period, which meant it was a dictatorship. And so, yes, if they were murderers, they would have just lined them up and shot them.
There was no trial.
Shallow grave and moving on. That would have been it. And so that was another layer.
So if you think about like the scene where the woman is stoned, and in the place where she violated the law, and that was the consequence of the law. in a way, they happen to be in this little gray zone physically on the train, even though culturally they all were, European or American. And all of them culturally deserved some kind of a fair trial. Like, where they were physically meant that, like, they could have been executed, like, coming off the train. So it was like a little bit of a gray zone that gave more of an opportunity for Poirot to be merciful over just. And at the end, we kind of talked about, like, but for the grace of God go I. Like, we have never had a child murdered, right?
Yes.
And so we're like,
Praise
those people are doing the wrong thing. And I pray that, God forbid, if anything happens to my loved ones, that God can I can cling to God and not to justice.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure, how do you redress that kind of a wrong? And that's where the death penalty, is talked about as being the arbiter of justice, life for a life. But, like, it's not even enough. It's like a never-ending pit inside of you if you're going to cling to justice.
Yeah, exactly. It's a false good at the end of the day. I mean, think about St. John Paul II with the man who tried to assassinate him. He could have easily said, the law is the law. You tried to kill me. That's attempted murder. The jury says you're to be hanged. Okay, well, there you go. That's the law. He didn't do that. He dropped all charges against this man and then went to the man. Or actually, no, he didn't drop the charges, but they did try him, but he would not say, hey, yes, you can kill this man. He said, I forgive this man. And he goes to this man so many times throughout his life, both of their lives, and he actually converts the man, and he becomes a good man. The same way as the little girl, I can't think of the
Maria
saint.
Goretti.
Yeah, Maria Goretti, who is
Saint Maria Goretti.
raped and then stabbed by the man who desired her, and then she forgives him, the family forgives him, and then he turns into his own saint. So, like, God can use these things, but if we are the ones that are in that situation, we will, it's not easy.
Yeah, but for the grace of God go I.
For the grace of God go I, yeah,
how
exactly.
Those people were destroyed in their anger and their need for justice against the horrific crime that was perpetrated. And that is, like, we're not promised that we will be spared from that in this world.
Yeah.
It's frightening. And I ask that God, never allow something like that to happen, but we cannot control all things.
No, we cannot.
And so I don't know, you just hope that God will be with us if ever we have to face something like that.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be a day if it does come, but we'll see. That's only up to God and His will. So, with that heavy topic, there you go. Check out the movies. There is a new one we haven't watched. The Haunting, I think is what they're calling it.
Oh, Haunting of Venice.
Yeah, The Haunting of Venice.
We haven't watched that one yet.
And we'll see what that's about. I don't know if that's available yet on Prime. We'll see. But we'll probably watch that one.
Yeah, they hit with Kenneth Branagh, they've done the two classic Agatha Christie storylines. So they've done Death on the Nile, which was a sequel to Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, a little saucy, but all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's also like a nice little whodunit with a twist.
Yes.
Another class. Most people are familiar with those. I cannot remember the plot for Murder or Haunting of Venice.
I don't remember it.
I don't remember it at all.
I don't think they did a David Suchet one of that.
I literally just watched all of them.
Yeah, we haven't seen it if they did.
Yeah.
So we'll see what this one's about. Yeah, I'd say that the Kenneth Branaghs are worth watching. The John Malkoviches, avoid them like the plague. Just don't watch them. They're so bad. I mean, I don't know how that man is able to do any movies. I don't particularly find him as a good actor, but somehow he keeps doing things.
People keep casting him.
So we watched those, and they were not that good. He did not portray the essence of Hercule Poirot. He did his own thing, which was bleh.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you got any thoughts, let us know. CatholicHitch@gmail.com.
May the Lord guide us and direct our journey.
Amen. swear if this dog boops me anymore.
I know.
But both these babies are looking at us, and one has got baby eyes and is being cute and holding on to a chair, and the other one is putting her paw on us the whole time.
Saying,
Yeah.
put me
Yes.
outside, let me outside.
Love me, love me. Good night, y'all.